Orale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin. Actually, bienvenue would be more apropos for my amigo here with the Les Expos hat. So let's bring him in. Mi amigo, ALAIN POUPART. He's the beat writer for SI.com, All Dolphins Podcast. We've gone 4 for 4 in this podcast in the NFL Insider Series. ALAIN, bienvenido. Thank you again.
Por supuesto, Jorge.
Oh man, no, this is awesome. This is awesome. Oh, also want to make sure you're following Familia FFB on YouTube. Get that, hit those notifications. This was one of the most popular episodes last year, and it's not because of me. You know, my amigo over here, and he really brought so much great information, and actually, yeah, that was great. I remember Father's Day weekend last year where I sent you a DM. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like 1,500 people have already watched this, and it's still going. So it was awesome. It was awesome. It's like, you know, that great following you have, mi amigo. This is one of the most fun teams to talk about when it comes to fantasy. And I mean, you got so many great performers, great concentration on there. Want to start with the quarterback. You know, you talked so much last year about, you know, having to keep Tua on the field, kept him on the field, and now you got led the NFL in passing. Yeah, and for a good chunk of the season, they were great. I mean, where is he right now on the trajectory as far as where he needs to be to continue to just do what he did last year, to build on what he did last year?
Yeah, and I know I'm not going to surprise you when I tell you that Tua is a very polarizing topic, and that even includes fantasy football as well, because he led the NFL in passing yards last year. He had 29 touchdown passes, and I don't believe that led the NFL. I think Jared Goff led the NFL in touchdown passes, if memory serves. And the problem was that they got a lot of rushing touchdowns out of Raheem Mostert. In fact, set a Dolphin record for most rushing touchdowns. And that is part of the question: is Tua still ascending and the best is yet to come, or have the past couple of years been what we can expect on an annual basis? And that's part of the decision the Dolphins are wrestling with right now as they are engaged in negotiations for a contract extension. I like to think if the Dolphins were pretty certain that the arrow would just do nothing but keep pointing up, that they would pay him whatever it takes to make him happy and get the extension done. But I think we still need to see it, because there were areas where Tua improved from 2022 to 2023. But this idea that's being thrown out there, sadly, by the national media and also by some of the Dolphin fans, is that he again took another step forward. Well, he did in some areas and he did in others. So, and again, there are still questions, despite the fact that he led the NFL in passer rating in 2022. He led the NFL in passing yards in 2023. And you put those two things together, the fact he played all 17 games last year, you would think, strictly looking at that, no-brainer, big contract extension and all that, quarterback for the next 5 or 6 years. Well, we're not there. And so why is that? Well, part of the thing is the durability. Even though last year he played every game, still is going to be a concern, because let's be frank, he's not big.
Right.
He was bigger last year because he put on some weight and he got thicker. He lost all of that weight and maybe then some. So again, the durability is going to be a concern, because he is much smaller than most NFL quarterbacks. And then the other issue was the lack of success against playoff opponents.
Right.
And it's not just the team, but also his numbers. He didn't reach 300 yards passing in any of his 7 games against playoff opponents, if we include the playoff game at KC. So again, he is one of those where I can see fantasy football players diving in head first to grab him. I would say proceed with caution.
And, you know, and even was still, you know, leading the NFL in passing and still throwing 29 touchdowns. I mean, he was the quarterback 9 on the season. So, and a lot of it is rushing does boost quarterbacks in fantasy, and he's not going to rush, and they're not going to take the chances on him at the 1 yard line, running in those balls, considering his concussion history, which is smart. Keep the guy on the field. And you got Mostert, Mostert, who just had a career year last year. But is he just kind of like in that realm? You mentioned Jared Goff, Dak Prescott. He had some tough games, and really, I mean, he had some tough games. A lot of those tough games were on the road, it seemed like, and most of those 7 games against playoff teams were on the road. He's so lethal at home, but is that next progression trying to build there, because they still have to, they still play in the AFC East, and there are cold weather teams that they have to go visit.
Mm-hmm. And if you look at their schedule, they have Green Bay on Thanksgiving night in Green Bay. I'm going to guess not going to be very warm. They play at Cleveland. They play at Cleveland in a Sunday night game, the next to last Sunday of the regular season. That's the NFL saying, take that, Dolphins. I mean, I'm going to guess also not going to be very warm. And then they close out the season at the Jets on January 4th or 5th, I think the date is. So, yeah, that's going to be the issue as far as where he ultimately lands as an NFL quarterback and how he is viewed. And right now, you look at national outlets all over the place do rankings of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. Right. And he usually comes in 12, 14. I've seen as low as 19. And that's because, again, the success hasn't been there. And cold weather is part of it. And again, playoff opponents also is part of it. And the thing is, as you mentioned, it just so happened that last year, pretty much all of their games against playoff opponents, other than it was Dallas that they had at home, and they squeaked by in a game where he didn't particularly play well, even though he threw for 290 yards, but it wasn't one of his better games. And then they had Buffalo in the regular season finale when the defense, which was decimated by injuries by that point, kept them in the game. They were up 14-7 heading into the fourth quarter, but the offense couldn't get out of its way. And yes, there were some injuries on offense as well, but this is where, again, if you're going to be a guy who's going to make $50 million a year at quarterback, you need to elevate your game and the team in the process, even if you're shorthanded on offense.
No, absolutely. Well, one of the guys that he really, I want to jump to the receivers real quick, because that's the great thing about this team. It's so concentrated. Tyreek Hill, just absolutely, just I'm going to say it. I think he had a legitimate shot at 2,000 yards if he didn't hurt his ankle there at the end. I mean, he was just phenomenal. I mean, yeah, two fantastic seasons. Mike McDaniel has really figured out a way to get him the deep ball. All arrows pointing up for him to be another one of. He's going as one of the top wide receivers. It's him and CeeDee Lamb as the 1 and 2 wide receivers, kind of neck and neck. Are we looking at that kind of season for another kind of assault on the high 1,000 yards?
No reason, absolutely zero reason to doubt that. I mean, because that's what he's been. Even before that in KC, he was highly productive. He just wasn't quite as much the focus of the offense as Mike McDaniel has made him since he got here. And you mentioned getting the deep ball. It's not just that. I mean, they'll throw to him in every situation. I mentioned the Dallas game, and the key play of the game was a 3rd and 4, where a first down would allow them to kill the clock to set up the game-winning field goal, and they threw a wide receiver screen. Like immediately, it's a snap, turn around, and throw it to Tyreek. Good blocking in front, boom, it's 10 yards, and game's over. And that's a quick, 10 yards for Tyreek. So they use him in all types of ways. The only concern with Tyreek, this is more so general than fantasy football related, is that each of the last 2 seasons, he had some ankle/foot injuries that slowed him down. It wasn't as noticeable in 2022, but he wasn't 100% down the stretch. And that was the case last year. And you're absolutely right. He was dead straight ahead heading into 2,000 yards first one ever to do it, or at the very least break Calvin Johnson's record, which is 1974 something, or obviously both. But the injury slowed him down, and then, and it's not, again, he got tackled by a Tennessee defender who basically landed on the back of his right ankle. Nothing you can do to prevent that. Tyreek Hill, if you see him up close, I mean, he is put together, and he works like a madman. So there's nothing more he can do as far as giving himself the best chance possible to be able to play and stay 100% the entire season. It's just that with the number of targets that he's going to get, obviously the more targets, the more chances you have of getting hurt, right? So, but heading into the season, I think you look at this season, I don't know what his over-under as far as receiving yards is, and to me it's like it's almost, if he doesn't get 1,500 yards, it's a disappointing season.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, one of the things that I do, I co-host a injury podcast focusing on fantasy football, and one of the things, and we talked about Tyreek Hill, kind of like how it really hurt him. He didn't have a 100-yard game after he hurt his ankle, and so but you know, there's been enough time to rest and rehab, and like you said, he's the guy who's going to do everything possible. You just hope that he doesn't have football happen to him, which, you know, some guys they could do it, and some guys it doesn't happen to them. But yeah, I'm flipping a coin with him and CeeDee Lamb as the first receiver, and I think there's going to be sometimes in a draft I'm going to take, if I have the two options, I'm going to take CeeDee. Sometimes I'm going to take Tyreek, but he's such a lethal weapon out there. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a player who had stop-start and then be at full speed. He's a unicorn. He's a unicorn, right?
Correct. Because here's the thing: what makes him unique is there are guys who are blazing fast in a straight line, just as fast as him. There are guys who are quick in a tight area, like him. Not many, but some. There's nobody I've ever seen who has this combination of quick area, of short area quickness, and the deep speed, and that makes him. I mean, you watch the overhead shots of the way defenses react to him when he's in the full run. And you see plays where Tyreek's running a straight line, and the DB at one point realizes, I got to turn back, turns back, starts sprinting to try to stay in front of, stay ahead of Tyreek, and then Tyreek breaks out, and then the cushion is like 12 yards. I mean, it's laughable. I've never seen anything like it.
No. So yeah, I think, 1,500 yards, I'm hoping for 1,800 and, double-digit touchdowns on this season. So just stay healthy. I think it's one thing that Sandy Koufax said this to Clayton Kershaw when he was 20 years old, just stay healthy. So please, Tyreek Hill, stay healthy. So speaking of staying healthy, I want to ask about Jaylen Waddle. I mean, he battled stuff all season last year, but the Dolphins knew what they have in him. They gave him the extension, so he's paid among the best receivers in the NFL. Arguably, there's a lot for a lot of people. Arguably, if he's not the best wide receiver 2 on a team, he's one. They're not. It's not long before they call and roll.
Correct.
Where is he from a health standpoint, from all the nagging stuff? But
it was just stuff that accumulated. It was usually always minor things, but it was a lot of different things. I mean, it started with like ribs, oblique in a joint practice with the Atlanta Falcons. Then there was he had a concussion against New England that knocked him out of a game. Then there was I think an ankle again. It was an ankle again on a reverse where he got tackled, and the guy. This is another instance of, again, because I when I talked about Tyreek, as well put together as he is, he's small, as in stature. Jaylen Waddle also is small. He's smallish, and he's got a small frame. He's not built like Tyreek, who, again, Tyreek's built like a boulder. Jaylen Waddle's a very small guy. He's also stupidly fast. So with him again, and we hate to do this with every player, as we're talking about the Dolphins skill position players, but can they last? Can they stay healthy? And that's maybe in a big picture about when we talk about the outlook of the team. that's part of the concern, because football is a game of attrition, and you get down to the end of the regular season into the playoffs. A lot of guys are playing banged up, and this is where, generally speaking, size kind of helps.
Yeah.
Because generally speaking, the bigger guys are going to last more than the smaller guys. So, but Waddle, as you mentioned, is easily top 3 when it comes to wide receiver 2 in the NFL. And even though he battled injuries last year, he's still topped 1,000 yards. 3rd straight season he's done that. And he's a guy who, like Hill, can go the distance on any play. And the one game where Tyreek Hill was out, the Dolphins featured him. Certainly helped that they played a team that was, to be very polite, offensively challenged in the New York Jets. And they fed him, and he had, 145 yards, including a 60-yard touchdown on that very famous Hard Knocks clip where, yes, here it is, one play drive. As you noticed, he saw one, man-to-man coverage on the outside, and it was a quick, I don't remember if it's stop and go or a quick out and up, one of those, and it's a double move, and bye-bye DJ Reed, and it's an easy touchdown.
Yeah, with these two guys, I mean, they're probably going to eat up over half of the targets on the season. Is there room for it? I mean, obviously you got Odell Beckham Jr. who came in, and you also have Malik Washington, who was he was drafted low, but he was highly regarded by some of the draft.
I would temper expectations on that dude as a rookie when you've got Hill, Waddle, Odell Beckham.
Right.
Don't forget Jonnu Smith.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Are they gonna? So Beckham will be a distant third, but Jonnu Smith, are we finally gonna get a tight end worth drafting in Miami?
Oh man, that's dangerous.
In the late rounds.
Yeah, in the late rounds. Because here's the thing: is the Dolphins did have a good receiving tight end when McDaniel arrived in Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki, however, is, again, to be extraordinarily polite, a less than ideal blocker. And to the point where if Mike Gesicki was on the field, you pretty much knew it was going to be a pass. Jonnu Smith now is a much better blocker, and he's also got receiving skills on par with Mike Gesicki. So is this now when the tight end reemerges in the Dolphin offense? I mean, to go an entire season last year with 0 touchdowns from the entire tight end position, that's pretty amazing, and not in a good way. So, I think he's going to get some targets, but to me, like 35 catches would seem to be like around the range I would expect. I wouldn't expect a whole lot. And then Odell Beckham, again, if Hill and Waddle play most, if not all of the games, Beckham's going to be a very distant third in terms of the targets. Because, again, what makes the Dolphin offense, is the speed with Hill and Waddle.
No, that's so true. So true. And let's talk about that running back duo. Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert they were both top 10 in fantasy points per game. Raheem Mostert led the NFL in touchdowns. He was, I think since 1993, I had the stat, there's only been 3 running backs to lead the NFL in touchdowns past the age of 30, and Raheem Mostert's the 3rd one. So, but I mean, he scored more touchdowns last year than he did in his entire career combined up to now. Injuries were an issue with both of them. You mentioned, it's good to have size. They're not the biggest guys, but how much you mentioned last year that Achane fit this offense perfectly. How do you see them being deployed, and does Achane take a little bit larger role, maybe more touches or maybe more catches?
I would definitely expect Achane to be a bigger part of the passing game. That I think, and that's something that's been mentioned. And the dude averaged like 8 yards per carry last year. It's like, it's screaming, give this guy the ball more. But again, he's not built to be a feature back. The same can be said about Mostert. Now they added another kind of the same type of back with Jaylen Wright, their 4th round pick from Tennessee, who I don't expect to get a ton of touches unless obviously injuries hit, as we always need to mention. But I just don't know how the Dolphins can look at their team and what Achane did last year and not tell themselves, without even reaching close to the point where we're overworking him and exposing him too much to injury, because again, he's not built to last. But they need to increase his touches. That's how insanely dynamic the guy was. I mean, Raheem Mostert is fast, and Achane's faster than him. I mean, and that's a fun conversation with the Dolphins, because I think with the GPS tracker that Jaylen Wright, I think, has the fastest time of those Dolphin players.
Oh, wow.
Don't quote me on that, but it's something that, or he has the fastest 40-yard dash time. With one of the metrics, he's actually faster than anybody on that team, which includes Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, and Devon Achane, who are all burners. And with Mostert's dangerous, because if you go strictly by last year, I mean, there was a fluky nature to it. He's not getting, I don't know what he wound up with, 18 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
I have a hard time seeing him coming close to that.
Yeah, it's hard to expect that, but you know what? People, I'll tell you this, in the early drafts, people are really waiting on him. And I mean, Achane is being drafted in the second round, early third round of drafts, but when it comes to Mostert, he's like eighth, ninth round, and I'm like, even if to me, I think people are baking in that they're expecting him to miss time, and he did miss two of the most important weeks of the season, which is the weeks 16 and 17 for the fantasy playoffs, but he was healthy. I'm like, if you get 10 games out of the guy, sure, I think it's a win. I think it's a win in this offense, in this ecosystem. Yeah, I mean, sign me up on that one. I love that what you said about Jaylen Wright, though. I mean, you don't get a real look until you get into training camp and maybe preseason games, but right. But he just seems cut from the same cloth, right?
He looks similar. I mean, to me, and again, it was tough because I'm going to go there because we got killed for it on the podcast, because my former colleague and I were like, I mean, it wasn't just us. It was all of us media members watching from the stands. Achane wore 28. Salud Ahmed wore 26. They're built physically very similarly. Maybe Achane's a little bit thicker, but last year they were very similar. Kind of the same running style, like jitterbug type of style. And the Dolphins usually wore white jerseys with the aqua lettering or numbering. And from the stands, if there was a running play and it was on the opposite field, you'd need the binoculars to know who it was, whether it was 26 or 28. And we made that point several times. And the regular season starts, and Ahmed is struggling a little bit, and Achane blows up, and we're getting chastised and blasted all over the place, like those two idiots who couldn't even tell the difference between them. I mean, sorry, that's sorry. And then with Jaylen Wright again, like, for example, like Achane last year, there's nothing that we saw in training camp that would suggest he would blow up the way he did. I mean, he looked good and he looked fast, but again, it's not the same thing, because you run through the play in training camp and then the defense stops, and then the running back will kind of like run 3/4 speed to finish the play. Well, I mean, when the game started, he was running at 100% speed, and that dude is like crazy fast. And so the thing in the offseason program where we saw Jaylen Wright, it was like, okay, but chances are and then maybe even in training camp, it's going to be like, okay, it's fine. And then preseason, it'll be a little bit more, and the regular season starts and be like, because his tape says, but I don't know. This is one of the guys he mentioned, like quickness and then straight line speed. He looks to me like more like straight line speed, where if there is an opening, he's going to get through it, and it's going to be good luck catching him, which is the same with Achane.
Oh, yeah. I think he's going to be more insurance policy early. Would say early in the season. Yeah. So, just wanted to get a quick hit. State of the offensive line, kind of
big mystery.
Really?
Well, because right now the projection would be Isaiah Wynn at left guard. He started the first 7 games, played well, then got hurt against the Eagles in the Sunday night game, was done for the year. He did not take part in any on-field work in the offseason program, in the practices that were open to the media, so I can't imagine he did anything at all. and his injury was a quad, I want to say. So logically, he should be fine. But and then we're talking about this is a guy, former first-round pick of the Patriots, whose career is littered with injuries. And then at right guard, right now we're looking at a battle probably between Liam Eichenberg, former second-round pick, who's kind of bounced around on the offensive line, or Robert Jones, a former rookie free agent, or Jack Driscoll, who was a free agent acquisition from the Eagles, who's not necessarily a household name. So that's a spot where it's easy to look at and go, yeah, they could use an upgrade. And then the left tackle position, you got Teron Armstead, who is probably a top 5 left tackle in the NFL, but cannot avoid the bad luck and injuries every year. Hasn't played a full season in the NFL yet, and this is going to be season 11, I think. So yeah, there are question marks on the offensive line, but I will point this out that the scheme, both in the running game and the passing game, puts a lot less pressure on the offensive line than other teams. And what helps with the passing game is because you see the metrics of like Tua has, the least amount of time to deliver the ball. Well, yeah, because Tyreek and Waddle get open like that, and Tua is very good at getting the ball get rid of the ball like that. So, and then Dolphins also call a lot of like quick throws to the wide outs where it's one step, throw it. Well, that factors in the average. That's what take one step back, throw it 1 second. Well, you do that often enough, it's going to bring down the average of the average time that you have to throw. And if you just look at the time, Tua had 2.1 seconds, whatever average time. Oh God, the offensive line sucks. Well, maybe, but the fact that they get rid of the ball and throw a lot of those quick hitters, that affects the time. So, long story short, very long-winded answer. In a big picture, it's not an offensive line that I don't think a whole lot of teams would envy, but based on what they are asked to do, I think it should be serviceable.
Oh, awesome. Well, on the other side of the ball, I mean, gosh, they got hit with the devastating injuries there at the end of the season that pretty much took out their pass rush. How are they shaping up, especially with a new defensive coordinator? Better against the run, better against the pass?
To be determined, right? Yeah. The big thing on defense, the big story is a couple of things. Is they've made a couple of really nice additions. The latest one being Calais Campbell, which is a fabulous move. Guy had 6.5 sacks last year. Yes, he's going to be 38 on September 1st, and the possibility of the production falling down dramatically at some point at that age certainly exists, but it wasn't there last year. So, and beyond anything else, he also is going to bring great intangibles. They added Kendall Fuller at cornerback to replace Xavier Howard, who battled injuries the last 2 years and wasn't the same Xavier Howard that he was in his prime, let's say, or for example, 2020 and 2021 when he was really, really good. They added Jordan Brooks to replace Jerome Baker at linebacker. That looks like an upgrade. And they drafted Chop Robinson in the first round, who was like a physical specimen, but with little production to show for it at Penn State. The biggest X factor, of course, though, is the status of Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. They're two really, really good edge defenders. Chubb had 11 sacks last year. Phillips had about 9. Both of them are coming off really significant injuries. Torn Achilles for Phillips, a torn ACL for Chubb. Very possibly going to start training camp on PUP. The hope is that at least one of them can get off PUP during training camp, be ready for the start of the regular season. It'd be great if it would be both. And then the other question is, even if they're off PUP and back in the lineup, are they going to be the same Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb that we saw last year? That could be a big key to the defense. More so than anything else, more so than Anthony Weaver coming in, implementing a style of defense that's going to look a lot like what Baltimore did and it was so effective there. So we'll see, but that's a big question mark there.
No, awesome. Well, mi amigo, this has been fantastic. This has been fantastic. You hit it out of the park one more time, just like Hawk Dawson back in the day. So, mi amigo, always appreciate it. Always appreciate you going 4-4. But I can't close it out without any food talk. So you got any late favorites that you've been enjoying, or
No, because then here's the thing: is I've also like completely gone. I've gone keto for a while, so carb action and which I loved, have pretty much disappeared. So lately, I can't think of anything that really jumps out. Love my eggs with rice cauliflower. I mean, it's nothing overly exciting. That's what jumps out to me.
all good, all good. Well, maybe a nice cerveza or a margarita might be able to fit in there.
Big glass of wine for me. I'm not a beer guy at all.
There you go.
Despite being a Canadian and playing hockey all my life, never was a beer guy.
A little poquito vino, always a good thing. Always a good thing.
Rojo.
Yes, perfect. Oh man. Well, mi amigo, please feel free, pump anything you got. I know you're going to be keeping busy these next several weeks.
Always. So you see the Twitter handle here and the podcast on YouTube, which will be on a regular basis during this slow time, but we'll be back on a daily basis once training camp hits. And also my written content is on the SI Dolphins site, which is si.com/NFL/Dolphins.
No, right there. Get them. I'm going to make sure to put that in the show notes, Familia. Make sure to check out his content because it's fantastic. Alan, muchas gracias. Once again, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us. Make sure you're following Familia FFB on YouTube. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. We're this NFL Insider Series. Hopefully we're going to be done right around the time training camp, get you all ready for the season. So muchas gracias for joining us. Always. Also, you can find me at Jorge Martin 17 on Twitter, and I push out all my content out there. And nothing left but just say, remember, todos somos familia. Salud.